When we think about war, we picture what's happening on the surface, right? The obvious destruction. But what if the real battlefield isn't just on the ground? What if the echoes of conflict reach deep, deep underground, and reshape that hidden world that powers our own? Today, we're going to dig into the really surprising link between armed conflict and geophysics, and see how explosions on the surface can totally silence the search for resources miles below.
And this is the question, isn't it? How is that even possible? This isn't just about oil and gas, though. It's a story about information, about a nation's geological memory that's literally stored in rock. And it's about how the absolute chaos of war can decide who gets to read that story for generations to come.
So, here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with that hidden connection between war and the world beneath our feet. Then, we're going to look at two huge conflicts in the Gulf to see the real-world impact. From there, we'll pull out 4 key patterns that just keep showing up and see what they can teach us about what's going on right now. All right, let's dive in.
So how does a battle on the surface manage to shake the world deep below? Well, it's actually pretty simple when you think about it. Finding energy resources is a massive, massive job. You need money, you need stability, and you need a ton of brainpower. War is basically the enemy of all 3 of those things. It creates this shockwave that doesn't just topple buildings. It literally erases the very maps we use to understand what's going on down there.
Okay, so before we go any deeper, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. Geophysics, it's basically the science of mapping what's underground. Imagine giving the Earth a kind of ultrasound, you're bouncing waves deep into the crust to get a picture of what's hidden. This is the single most crucial first step to finding any major energy source. Period.
All right, let's jump into our first case study, the Persian Gulf. This is where a brutal series of conflicts, first the Iran-Iraq War and then the Gulf War, didn't just redraw the maps on the surface, they completely shattered the geological picture underneath.
For more than a decade, this entire region was just rocked by constant conflict. I mean, just think about that for a second. An entire generation of exploration and scientific discovery just gone. It wasn't a pause button, it was a hard stop. And it all ended in these apocalyptic fires of 1991 when Kuwait's oil fields were just set on fire.
The contrast between before and after is just staggering. Before these wars, the region was buzzing with international teams, all working together, creating this incredibly detailed map of its underground wealth. But after, that map was left in tatters. Not only was the physical equipment destroyed, but these huge black holes appeared in our collective knowledge of the area, and that sent shockwaves through the entire global energy market.
And the scale of this physical destruction, it's just hard to wrap your head around. Over 700 oil wells in Kuwait were torched. You have to understand, each one of those wells wasn't just a pipe sticking out of the desert. No, it was a vital data point. It was a unique window into the geology miles below the surface. Losing them all at once, that's like ripping 700 pages out of the planet's diary.
Okay, now let's fast forward about a decade to the 2003 Iraq War. The problem this time was different. It was quieter, but maybe even more dangerous than hundreds of burning oil wells. This time wasn't just about physical destruction.
The real risk this time was the potential loss of a nation's entire geophysical memory. I want you to just imagine decades of painstaking research, the complete detailed blueprint of a country's natural wealth, suddenly on the verge of just being erased, wiped out, gone forever.
It was literally like a treasure hunt in the middle of a war zone. That's what happened. Decades of absolutely priceless scientific work stored on these fragile old magnetic tapes and paper logs were just scattered all across a chaotic country. Losing this data, man, it wouldn't just be a setback. It would be like burning down the National Library and forcing the entire country to start from scratch. The race was on to save this stuff.
This quote just nails it perfectly. When you lose this kind of data, you're not just losing information. You're losing your history. You're losing the story of the land itself. And with it, you lose a critical key to your country's entire economic future.
And here's the kicker. You can save all the data tapes in the world, but they're totally useless if there's nobody left who knows how to read them. Years of war and sanctions created what they call a lost generation of Iraqi geoscientists. This huge gap in human knowledge and actual expertise opened up, and it made it almost impossible to pick up the pieces, even after a lot of the physical data was saved.
So when we step back and we look at these 2 stories side by side, something really powerful starts to emerge. You see a clear framework.
We can actually boil down the chaotic impact of war into 4 patterns that just keep happening over and over again.
Think of it like a domino effect. First, you get the violent destruction, which weirdly enough creates new opportunities for new players. Then, in all that chaos, the surviving data suddenly becomes a priceless national treasure. But at the exact same time, the conflict creates a brain drain, a huge gap in human capital. And finally, to even operate in these new dangerous environments, you're forced to develop brand new technology, innovation born from pure necessity.
So, why does any of this history matter right now? Well, because this 4-part framework, it isn't just about the past. It's actually a super powerful lens we can use today to understand what could happen in modern geopolitical hotspots. Like, for instance, the ongoing tensions between the US and Iran.
You know the saying, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. By using this framework, we can start to actually see the patterns emerging in today's headlines. We can stop just reacting to every crisis and start anticipating the hidden shockwaves they're going to send through this absolutely vital industry.
Let's just apply the framework right now. Think about it. The data isn't just at risk from a bomb anymore, it's vulnerable to a cyber attack that could wipe it out in seconds. The need for new technology is driving a huge shift to satellite monitoring so you don't have to put people in a war zone. The risk of a human capital crisis is totally real, with a potential brain drain of Iranian scientists. And that destruction and opportunity piece, any major conflict would create insane market volatility, opening the door for totally new players to rush right in.
And that leaves us with a really challenging final thought. We all like to think that our understanding of the planet grows from pure scientific curiosity. But what if the next great leap in our ability to see beneath the surface isn't born in some peaceful lab, but is forged in the fire of conflict? What if raw necessity, not the joy of discovery, is what will ultimately reveal the secrets of that hidden world right beneath our feet? It really makes you wonder,